I'm going to introduce Emile once again just to answer a couple questions if you guys have, and then we're going to go straight into the set. I forgot to thank two people that I really wanted to thank. Stacy right there. Who, both Stacy and Natalie, this would not have happened if it wasn't for them. And of course, Emily from Urban Artistry especially. I think half the people, or two-thirds of the people in this crowd are Urban Artistry youth, so that's what's up. Emile, come on up. Nope. Got a whole nother hour. Does anyone have a question?
How do you really start to practice on three to do like break dances, DJ, MC?
Her question was, how do I get to practice, what was it? B-Boy, MC, all the elements. Okay, I don't actually DJ, so everything else. I suck at some of them. You know, basically in hip hop, you have to dedicate yourself to one. And the one I dedicate myself to is the activism in my community. The other things are just things I've been passionate about, but you know, you gotta sacrifice something. That answer? Any other questions?
Are you still getting funding from the South African government for your work?
Any South African government officials here? We got funded just before the World Cup, and then the funding was withdrawn. And now that I don't have a cent left. No, we actually, the only real funder has been the South African government and the Norwegian and Swedish governments. So corporates in South Africa actually donate money towards revolution. Where? Can we get a young person to do the running? Ah, thank you. You're younger than what I am, myself.
I don't think so. Okay, so how much American hip hop influenced South African hip hop and what you did in South Africa, what we saw in the movie?
The first wave of hip hop that arrived in South Africa was specifically b-boying, and so everybody started b-boying, and then the next thing that interested them was the graffiti, and the rap was always just that music that we danced on, you know, until the rest of the world started promoting rap music over the b-boys and the graph. And the first thing that we is a song that actually made me realize you can rap about your community. I think it goes, there are flies on their faces and they're living like mice, and their houses even make the ghetto look nice. And I think it's from Grandmaster Flash or Malama or something. I think, I can't remember the name of the song. But then immediately afterwards I wrote a song called Apartheid Sucks. I didn't know exactly what I was saying, but hey. And then when Public Enemy released their albums, we realized the power of political rhyme. And but because we b-boys, a lot of our song has a lot of beat, you know, and a lot of our time is spent between the rhymes actually explaining to the people. But hip hop in all over Africa, I don't think American rappers know the power they wield lyrically. You know, if a kid is walking around the streets of Cape Town, my chain hang low, you're like, what the hell? You know, and kids in South Africa, the first time they grab the mic, they all, yo, what's up? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, and it's like that in all over Africa. You know, actually, yeah, all over the world. Actually, I got a story about a kid in like northern Sweden who comes up to me and like, you know, pale as the driven snow, he says, yo, what's up, nigga? I'm like, and the sad part is that the only, you know, I realized afterwards that the only exposure he has to African Americans or Africans as a whole is MTTV, you know? so that you can't really help. That's the only time, you know, he sees that. So anyway, that's the power of. Unfortunately, conscious MCs don't get onto radio in South Africa. Yeah, yeah, I've noticed that as well. Yeah. Answer your question? Is there one more?
Being involved in what you describe as activism and service over a long time now, what personal transformation have you seen in yourself as an individual being involved in this process?
Is it up? I grew my hair. No, I'm sorry. I think I learned more from hip hop. I studied to be a school teacher and I taught for 3.5 years. But before that, I was involved in hip hop all the way through, you know. And I only really discovered myself through the lyrics of Public Enemy, and I think all of that information made me realize, as you know, when you first hear that, you're like, what? Those whiteys did what? And then you're like, okay, calm down, you know. And then you start learning more about yourself. And once the anger disappears, not that it doesn't disappear completely, but I learned so much more about who I am and just people on the planet as a whole. And the places I travel to, I constantly learn. I realized that once they put you 10 feet under or whatever, that's when you stop learning. So it's a process. I'm learning all the time. You know, what I think now might change. You never know.
Could you describe the hip-hop scene in South Africa from like different languages, like rapping in Afrikaans or in Zulu or anything like that, and also like rappers you can recommend from South Africa for us, for the Americans here?
And then last one was a bit muffled. The scene in South Africa?
Yeah, and rappers you can recommend.
Oh, yeah. To Me and the Volume. Yeah. To Me and the Volume. Yeah. Jeez. Double HP is Proverb, Pro Kid. Yeah, an Afrikaans MC who's just brilliant. His name is Jet Stunner. Alright, is one of them. There's a new guy called Jacques. You think who else? You want to look at like the old stuff of Prophets of the City. They like legendary South African hip hop group. Angelo. Ah, yeah. There's a lot of kids on the Cape Flats that also rhyme, like Garlic Brown. Just a gang of kids. There's Fifth Floor. There's Ill Skills. There's a whole lot of, I could go on. There's just like a hell of a lot of them. None of them that I mentioned except for Double HP, Proverb, and Pro Kid are actually signed. You know, everybody else is just, and even the signed ones don't sell more than 5,000 CDs. So why sign? Anyway, yeah. As far as the language is concerned, people rap in all the languages in South Africa. You know, the only one that's not being rhymed in yet is the language of the original Southern African people. It's called Nama. It's the San so-called Bushmen. Those people who saw Gods Must Be Crazy, those guys. Is that, oh, this is, they're talking like way before everybody's time over here, sorry. Okay, so that's people are still learning, relearning the language because only a small amount of people that actually speak the language.
To begin with, thank you so much for the work that you're doing in your community. And I totally dig how the video reflected kind of using hip hop as a tool for social change, for like national reconstruction, and for breaking barriers. So I guess the question is how do you kind of implement life skills training, or how do you prepare these children also with job skills or life skills so they could be just active participants in society and moving beyond hip hop as art and cultural form, but more so as using it in terms of actual, like, hey, what's tangible, what skills can they develop from it?
A lot of the kids, when beginning, you know, most kids they want to get involved in what's considered cool. So hip hop is just generally considered that, you know. And a lot of them initially start out as B-boys, but like we try to show is that, you know, beyond all the moves and the looking cool and the, you know, there's the mere idea of stepping into a circle. And when I think a true B-boy is able to stand on their own and speak out, I think half the battle is won. Because that sense of confidence is extremely lacking in South Africa. It's difficult to explain this to you because Americans are very confident. You know, so I always say that for the World Cup that just happened, the South African team almost feel like they're apologizing when they hit the field, whereas the American squad go onto the field knowing that they're going to win. It's a big difference. If someone is very confident, they already got half the battles won, you know. And in Africa, because of colonialism, slavery, apartheid, capitalism, the people's spirit and knowledge of themselves is completely depleted. You know, the knowledge that we all are of one origin, it doesn't exist. When I ask the kids, all the Africans raise their hands, most of the kids, even if they're Xhosa or if they're Zulu, don't see themselves as African, because African is always associated with those guys who don't have food. Those guys that your parents speak about, you know, don't waste your food because they are African starving. Yeah, they even say that in Africa. You know, so it's a very negative mentality and self-image, and it's not only in Africa. I mean, I've come here and a lot of African Americans don't loudly say that they invented the traffic lights or the doorstop or peanut butter. You know what I mean? It's something that isn't internalized about how great people are, and it's very powerful to actually get someone to step into the circle and be proud of who they are. And I think from that point is you're able to get them to speak out and to stand up and take action against anything that's happening in their community.
Okay, Emile, we have one more question before we then get to the big performance piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to say in 2001 I had the opportunity of attending the UN Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa. And parallel, there was a hip-hop conference taking place with the youth. And the hip-hop summit came out of there, which is now a recognized NGO. What part, if any, did your movement have in that process?
I didn't get the first part of it, so can you say it again?
During the UN Conference Against Racism in 2001, there was a youth hip-hop summit taking place in conjunction.
Okay.
And the hip-hop summit, which is a recognized NGO, very Hellenic Yearwood, what part, if any, did your movement have involved in?
Okay, yeah, I was there. Actually, I shouldn't say this, Vitalis will kick my ass. Actually, that's where I met her. But so that's something good that came out of it. But we're very skeptical about the UN's agenda in the hip hop community. Just say that out. That's just how it is. Hip hop was a very hey, they didn't care a long time ago. Why they care now? You know, and that was pretty much the feel of a lot of people. The selection of people that were involved was very sketchy. I mean, to have what was his name, Gangstar, represent at the event. We were thinking that someone would come and, I mean, even him himself, to actually have dialogue with the kids about the reality of the music industry, but it was very superficial, you know. And so we didn't really have much faith in what was being done there. And so I was the only one from Cape Town that came to the event because most of Cape Town's hip-hoppers didn't feel that it was of any value. At the same time, I was only there for K9. But I understand what you're saying, and I think it should have been more, they should have spent more time actually finding out who are the people on the ground doing the work. And they will have much more results.